I'm going to back it up just a bit because I want us to hear the whole passage from Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31. So let me get to that in my little fancy-dancy little computer gadget here. Hello, there's Proverbs, yes. All right, let's start here. Verse 10, a capable wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hand, she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. And then it continues. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson. She makes herself coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the city gates, taking his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchant with sashes. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her happy, her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is in vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. Never let it be said that I shy away from controversial passages in the Bible. This particular passage in Proverbs, for some reason, is considered controversial. Modern feminists absolutely hate this passage, perhaps because it casts women in traditional roles in the family, or it can be read in such a way as to suggest that women are secondary to men. I'm not sure why, especially since it is really none of these things. In fact, it is quite different. It is neither limiting of women, nor is it purely traditional, as we shall see. And maybe it would surprise you to know that this passage is part of a larger section that actually comes from the teaching of a woman. If you look at the heading of Proverbs, chapter 31 in the NRSV, you'll notice this: the teaching of King Lemuel's mother. Now, headings are added by translators, so they're not part of the text, but they take their cues, obviously in this case, from the actual text itself. As we read verse 1 in Proverbs chapter 31, it says, "The words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him." So, this chapter in Proverbs is from the teachings of King Lemuel's mother. Lemuel is a king that we know very little about. In fact, he is mentioned only here in Proverbs. Some traditions place him as king of Massa, which would make him an Ishmaelite king, not an Israelite. Part of Abraham's family through his first son with the Egyptian slave girl Hagar, Ishmael. Massa is the name of one of the tribes of Ishmael, but we're not sure where this tribe resided in the ancient Middle East or where this kingdom would have been. So our passage today comes from the second part, though, of Proverbs chapter 31. The first part, verses 1 through 9, deals with more general issues for the king, such as the proper use of alcohol and caring for the poor. And there's also something about not giving your strength to women, which seems a bit cryptic, and I'm not about to get into that. But verses 10 through 31 is formed as an acrostic Each line in the poem begins with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet, all 22 of them. That's an acrostic. It's part of the Hebrew poetry tradition. And when you have a poem like this, an acrostic poem in Hebrew, it implies that the subject is completely covered. It's completely handled in this poem. Obviously, reading it in English, it loses some of the power of an acrostic. Nevertheless, it is a powerful passage of Scripture. So let's get into this. Let's look at it. The passage purports to describe to Lemuel a capable wife. Other translations render it noble character, that's the NIV, or an excellent wife, that's the ESB and the NASB, or virtuous wife, that's the New King James. The Message, the paraphrase by Eugene Peterson, has it this way: a good woman is hard to find. Clearly, Lemuel's mother is concerned with her son finding a suitable wife, as most mothers are likewise concerned. And she focuses on the characteristics that make a wife capable, excellent, and virtuous. A man who finds such a woman will find her to be more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. So, seemingly, as we all know, the success of a man is influenced largely by his spouse. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life, which is something that we can all heartily recommend. Can you imagine the opposite of that? She does him harm and not good all the days of her life? That would not be good. Then the passage goes into details about this excellent woman or wife. We won't look at them all. You can study the passage yourself, but let's consider the characteristics that this passage lifts up for this capable or excellent woman or wife. Far from describing some oppressed, Handmaid's Tale kind of barefoot and pregnant version of womanhood, the excellent wife is trustworthy, supportive of family and by family, entrepreneurial, successful in business, generous, compassionate, strong, with dignity, wisdom, kindness. She's praiseworthy and beloved. Frankly, I'm not sure how Proverbs was able to describe my wife, Cindy, so completely. Cha-ching! Just getting ready for a vacation, wanted to start well, you know what I mean? But notice how well-rounded this description is. She's involved in household management, to be sure, but she's also involved in commerce and charity. And she's characterized by things that are universally appreciated: strength, dignity, wisdom, and kindness, which most people would agree are admirable qualities. But perhaps most important of all is this, from verse 30. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Now, no husband in his right mind is going to downplay his wife's charm and beauty, but clearly, to fear the Lord is an even greater quality. The world lifts up charm and beauty, but the Bible lifts up fear of the Lord. Last week, if I had preached the sermon I was planning, we would have spent some time discussing wisdom and how its roots are in the fear of the Lord. Proverbs 9, verse 10 says it this way: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. This is true for both men and women. The word fear here is not being afraid, but being in a deep awe or respect of the Lord. And you'll notice that one of the characteristics of a capable wife is wisdom. I would submit that truly wise men would recognize the value of a woman who fears the Lord. And women would do well to recognize the value of men who likewise fear the Lord. In God's economy, fear of the Lord is greatly valued, far more than mere physical appearance or personality. And it would do us all well to elevate the fear of the Lord in our value system for women and for men, because a person who fears the Lord will defer all authority to God, which means that they will honor and obey the Bible. They will trust God to guide in all things, even and maybe especially when the world and our culture opposes the values taught in the Bible. One who fears the Lord does not fear people, because they know that the authority of people is fleeting, while the authority of God is forever. And the promises of God are true and lasting, while the promises of people are suspect and fleeting. If presented with the decision to obey God or human authority, we need to be able to say with Peter and the apostles from Acts 5:29, we must obey God rather than any human authority. Now, we have to be careful that we don't elevate our own opinions to the point that we confuse them with God's. So I'm not talking about masking or not masking, vaxing or not vaxing, because the Bible really doesn't address these matters. We have a tendency to equate our own opinion to that of God, don't we? Especially our political opinions. One who fears the Lord, however, will examine their assumptions and opinions objectively, comparing and contrasting them to the Word of God. Because when we come to the judgment seat, our excuse of, but I thought, won't pass muster. Finally, our passage sounds a note for equality of men and women in verse 31. It says, give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. Now, we need to appreciate just how revolutionary this is. In the ancient world, a woman was considered the property of men, first her father and then her husband. And everything that the woman produced, including children, belonged to the man. This verse is one that points the way toward equality. That the fruit of a woman's hand should at least be partially hers is absolutely revolutionary for the time. And that she would be given recognition or praise for her work is equally revolutionary for the time. This and other passages in the Bible show that God's design is for men and women to be equal partners in life, that neither is subservient to the other, that all are valued and cherished in God's heart. So a woman who fears the Lord is to be valued and lifted up for praise and honor, and that's a good word. As I mentioned, Cindy and I are going to Tennessee this week to attend the New Room Conference near Nashville. It's an awesome conference focused on a new great awakening. And Wesleyan Christians from many denominations gather to worship, hear teachings, and attend workshops and fellowship with one another for 3 days. Afterward, we're going over to Knoxville to visit Cindy's cousin and explore the eastern part of the state. I'm happy to tell you that Pastor Anthony Boger will be here next Sunday to preach the word. His sermon will be Transformed Through Suffering, based in 1 Peter 5, 7 through 11. So I encourage you to be here next Sunday to hear Anthony. Now let's spend a few moments in prayerful reflection as we consider what God may be saying to us today.